that that unit will be able to continue on a regular basis to brief this committee?
Senator, I want to make sure that I'm clear throughout the day that if confirmed as DNI and I look at the global threat landscape, I mentioned the global pandemic and the IC's role with respect to that. But the other immediate concern is safe, secure, credible elections, and I will do everything and make it my highest priority, if confirmed, to do everything possible that we have those safe, secure, credible elections in 2020.
But it's important then, again, that that group who has briefed this committee on a regular basis continues to have that ability to brief. And again, echoing what the chairman has said, and I don't know whether, our clocks?
They're not running.
Will you give me a high sign? Hold on, let me just, did I hit my 5 minutes or my, last question then. Should you be confirmed, we are already past due date on when we would have the traditional worldwide threat hearing. You've committed to the chairman that you would hold that hearing. My hope would be that that commitment would take place within 60 days of you being confirmed.
Senator, I'll make a commitment to, I look forward, if confirmed, to appearing as a DNI in a worldwide threats hearing. I don't want to make a commitment in terms of time that don't know what I'm promising exactly. What I will make the commitment is that if confirmed, I agree that it's important, and I will work to make that happen as expeditiously as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congressman Ratcliff has been incredibly generous with his time with me. I've had an opportunity to spend some time with him. I have all the questions that I need answered from him already. Indeed, most of them aren't available for discussion in open setting like this. But in the interest of keeping you on time and on schedule, I'm going to yield back my time since I do have answers to my questions. So thank you.
I thank you, Senator Risch. With that, Senator Feinstein.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Congressman, welcome. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about whistleblowers, if I might. This committee has adhered to a tradition of protecting whistleblowers. However, it's my understanding that your participation in President Trump's campaign to punish and discredit one IC whistleblower suggests you do not align yourself with this bipartisan approach. Let me give you an example. During a December 11 hearing of the House Committee on the Judiciary, you claimed without any evidence that the whistleblower got caught making a false statement. On December 12th, you tweeted that the whistleblower didn't tell the truth, both verbally and in writing. You also attacked HPSI staff for providing guidance to potential whistleblowers on how to lawfully make a disclosure. Here's the question. If you are confirmed, do you believe that your past remarks concerning the Ukraine whistleblower will discourage IC whistleblowers from exercising their rights, consistent with the law, to make protected disclosures?
Senator, thanks for the question. I want to make it very clear. If confirmed as DNI, every whistleblower, past, present, and future, will enjoy every protection under the law. I don't want to relitigate old issues of what happened during the impeachment inquiry. My issue was not with the whistleblower. My issue was with what I perceived as a lack of due process in the House process. Again, I don't want to relitigate the issue, so I'll leave it at that. But every whistleblower can expect full protection under the law. Whistleblowers are so important. A whistleblower doctor in China is one of the reasons we got an earlier warning. So I'll make that commitment to you, Senator.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. On the evening of April 3rd, President Trump announced that he was firing Mr. Atkinson because he had sought to transmit to Congress a credible whistleblower complaint of urgent concern, one that was required by law to be transmitted to Congress. Do you share the belief of members of this committee and the Senate that Mr. Atkinson was improperly fired, despite the fact, as Acting Director McGuire said, he did everything by the book and followed the law?
Well, Senator, I appreciate the question, and I think before you entered the room, I talked about my history and strong support of working with Inspector Generals. I talked about Inspector General Horowitz, who is someone I went to when I thought there was a problem with the misuse of intelligence authorities, and very much appreciated his approach and work, and some of the concerns that I raised were presented in his findings and his report. With respect to Inspector General Atkinson and the situation that you described, I don't have enough information to answer your question, and if I can explain why, I will tell you that my dealings with Inspector General Atkinson, I had no issues. I think he did what he thought was right. I think he did think that he was following the law. The flip side to that is that the legal opinion within the ODNI from the General Counsel and from the Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel, my reading of it is that their determination was that he may have exceeded his authority because the investigation involved issues that were not intelligence activities or intelligence community employees. That's a legal question that I don't know the answer to. Again, I very much want to reiterate that if confirmed, how important inspector generals are in government, and my strong history of working with them. And I understand, although he's in an acting capacity, that Inspector General Tom Monheim is in that role. I don't know him, but he's a 30-year veteran, very well respected, so I hope to have the opportunity to work with him.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. If confirmed, do you commit to directing all IC agencies to cooperate fully with congressional oversight requests regarding COVID-19 and to promptly produce the full membership and staff of the Congressional Intelligence Committees, all intelligence requested by Congress regarding COVID-19?
Senator, thanks for the question.
And that's meant to be broad.
It is, and I appreciate
Yes.
the question. And in my opening remarks, and then I think reiterating in one of my responses, that the immediate concern that I have is getting answers from the American people through the intelligence community. If confirmed, the intelligence community will be laser focused on getting all of the answers that we can regarding how this happened, when this happened, and I commit to providing with as much transparency to you as the law will allow, and with due regard for sources and methods, that everything be provided as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions quickly about
Yes.
hard targets. In your view, is the IC doing enough to collect against hard targets like North Korea?
Senator, as you know, the challenge with North Korea is visibility, and I think that my impression from the outside, like you as a member of an oversight committee of intelligence, is that we have very good collection. I'm only caveating it because if confirmed as DNI, I may have a different viewpoint or more information to look at. I would make it a priority. I think collection, obviously, and analysis of our intelligence is what makes this the greatest intelligence enterprise in the world. And I will commit that if we are not doing enough, Senator, I will make it a high priority to improve any standards that we may need to employ.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations on your nomination. And I think that's you. I can't. People are watching on television. They can't see that far away. We've gotten to know each other a little bit over the years, not in the setting of intelligence, but through mutual friends. So I just kind of want to ask you a very simple and straightforward question. You have an accomplished career. You are, by electoral standards in a seat that would be considered by the Cook Report as a safe district. You seem to be enjoying your work. Why are you doing this? And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, obviously you've exposed yourself to criticism, and the climate today in politics is pretty intense. I think the most fundamental question is why is this a job that you are willing to step forward and do at this time?
Senator, I appreciate the question, and I appreciated the time that we've had to get to know each other when you've come over to the lower house to visit with us. First of all, I think anytime the president asks you to do something for your country, you ought to consider if there's a way for you to salute smartly and say yes. But beyond that, you have to want this job, and for the same reason I, in my opening, talked about leaving a successful law practice to make a fraction of that to be a federal prosecutor. The mission's too important, and what the intelligence community means, how it has positioned the United States as the world's superpower, and I think everyone knows that the relationship between the intelligence community, Congress, the president, and across the board right now is something that's at issue. We've got intelligence authorities and their uses being questioned. I realize it's a sort of a difficult time, but D&I, again, the core responsibility is leadership, and it's easy to raise your hand when things are going perfectly. It's harder to raise your hand when they're not, and the mission's too important of keeping Americans safe, and the opportunity to lead is something that I want to do. And I guess I will say this: it's been the privilege of my life to serve as a member of Congress, but the best job I ever had was to be the United States Attorney. And what I loved about it was an apolitical position. I stood up always to represent the United States of America, never one party or another. And I very, very much view that as this role for the D&I. I look forward to treating every member, Republican and Democrat, exactly the same way, and frankly, being out of politics.
I mean, that's an important question, because I've heard some of the skepticism that's been raised is about experience and the experience needed to lead this intelligence enterprise. And it's my view you actually have pretty extensive experience, both as on the committee in the House, both on Homeland Security and Intelligence, and also on Judiciary, and then your work, as you said, as a U.S. Attorney. What is it in what you have done over the last, during your career, that you believe prepares you best for the role you now have of sort of overseeing all of these different pillars of our intelligence capabilities?
Well, I think as was mentioned earlier, I've now seen intelligence from three different vantage points: as an end user and a developer, as a consumer of intelligence, and as an overseer of intelligence. And as far as experience, I started handling national security issues back in 2005, and that included intelligence authorities. My first exposure with FISA was 2005, and in trying to respond to this committee, we found that in at least one instance, the authorities that I used remain, or the matters that I work on remain classified. So from an experience standpoint, as far back as 2005, I've been using those authorities. But I think the role of U.S. Attorney in particular, and my time as Chief of Anti-Terrorism for 4 years, is particularly well suited and analogous to the D&I. So as U.S. Attorney, I was running a federated enterprise, working across federal agencies, integrating, coordinating, sharing information, and doing so in an apolitical way. And that's very much what the Director of National Intelligence does, integrates and coordinates across all 17 intelligence agencies, making the community better so that it can make members of Congress, the President, and our policymakers better informed on national security decisions. My time in Congress as well, the committees that I've been on, legislating, creating national security laws, I think I've got a broad, deep, and more than qualified level of experience when we talk about national security issues. And I also think I've got good judgment, because I've identified when there are problems with the use of intelligence authorities, and I've spoken truth to power when I've seen it misused.
I enthusiastically support your nomination, and I look forward to voting for you on the committee and again on the floor. Thank you.
If any member currently has one additional question, I'll be happy to entertain them. If not, Senator Feinstein, if you've got a quick one.
If I could ask one question, that's something that I have tried to cure. I've been very concerned by the growth of contractors over the last 20-plus years in the agencies. And when I was chairman of the committee, we made a big push to ensure that all inherently government functions of the IC were performed by government employees and not contractors. It's my understanding that that effort continues today, and we made substantial progress over the 2 decades in this. What is your view on the appropriate use of contractors in the intelligence community?
Senator, I'm not saying this because you're considering me for the position as the nominee, but I agree with every word you just said with regard to contractor use and how it should be limited and where government employees should be doing government functions. I know there's always a look in terms of ratios and the percentages. I'm not a one-size-fits-all person. If confirmed as DNI, I'll look at where things stand right now. But the concern that you have, the sentiment that you expressed, let me just reiterate that I agree with you completely and look forward to working with you on this issue if confirmed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. With that, the first block of time has expired. The chair would move to the second block of time and go somewhat out of order because Senator Wyden's not here. I will turn to Senator Collins for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congressman, I appreciated the opportunity to talk with you last week as one of the authors, along with former Senator Joe Lieberman, of the 2004 law that created the Director of National Intelligence position. I have a special interest in making sure that the leader of the intelligence community fulfills what we envision. In that regard, I appreciated the opportunity to review your background with you in depth to make sure that you met the statutory standard of having extensive national security expertise. So today, I want to turn to a different issue. As some members have already said today, the ability to speak truth to power is essential to serving as a successful DNI. Would you communicate the intelligence community's analytic views to the president, even if you knew that he would strongly disagree with them?
Of course.
Would you be willing to communicate the IC's analytic conclusions to the president, even if you believed it would place your job in jeopardy?
Of course.
When, assuming your confirmation, when you participate in the next open worldwide threats hearing, and you are asked to provide an unclassified IC assessment that you know that the president vehemently disagrees with, what would you do?
Senator, whether you're talking about the president, whether you're talking about Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, anyone's views on what they want the intelligence to be will never impact the intelligence that I deliver. Never.
Thank you for that strong response. I'm nevertheless going to ask you one more that has to do with the internal operations of the intelligence community. What would you do if the intelligence community was prepared to publish a President's Daily Brief that directly contradicted the White House's conclusions on an important issue like North Korea? Would you still allow the PDB to be published? And the reason I ask this question is there are some very experienced analysts within the IC that are concerned that you might attempt to shade the conclusions in order to avoid alienating the president in presenting his daily brief.
Senator, I think before you were in the room, I've reiterated multiple times that I won't shade intelligence for anyone, whether we're talking about the president, members of Congress, any policymakers. As far as published on the president's daily brief, it's I guess I'm not sure the word publish when you say how you mean that.
I should have used the word issued.
So absolutely, I just want to make sure because the president's daily brief is the president's daily
Right.
brief, and but to the larger question, again, just if I can reiterate as clearly as possible, if confirmed as DNI, one of the things that I've made clear to everyone is that I will deliver the unvarnished truth. It won't be shaded for anyone. What anyone wants the intelligence to reflect won't impact the intelligence that I deliver.
And finally, and I asked this question to you on the telephone, but I want to ask it to you for the record. The president has said that the IC has run amok and needs to be reined in. Do you share the president's view?
I think what we talked about, Senator, about a number of things there, and I'm sure going to get a lot of questions about what the president says or what the president thinks. And again, I don't mean to be repetitive, but none of those things, regardless of what he says or how he says them, or how Nancy Pelosi or Mitch McConnell or anyone says about the intelligence or the intelligence community, will not impact the intelligence that I deliver.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congressman, welcome, and
Thank you.
let me begin this way. Donald Trump said last year, the Constitution says, and I quote here, "I can do whatever I want as president." The Attorney General has said the president doesn't have to follow the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act and can conduct surveillance without a warrant. Those two statements are a direct threat to the constitutional rights of Americans, and it makes the Director of National Intelligence a last line of defense for our democracy. Do you believe the president can spy on Americans outside the law? And I would like...
Senator, I don't think anyone can spy on Americans outside the law.
So would you refuse to authorize the intelligence community to conduct warrantless surveillance?
Senator, when you talk about
you answered no. So I'm asking
just be
you.
real clear. My answer is consistent. Whatever the law is what I will do as if confirmed as DNI. Within my authorities, I will act within my authorities, but most importantly, I will be guided by the Constitution and the rule of law. So whatever authorities allow the intelligence community to do, all of our actions, if I'm the director, will be in compliance with what the law is.
My time is short.
I'm sorry.
Congressman, the point is you really didn't say no in answer to my question. You said there may be circumstances. I happen to think that answer, that there may be circumstances when the president can spy on Americans outside the law, is an exceptionally dangerous bit of testimony.
Maybe
I'm going to move on.
Maybe, can I just, because the record's clear, maybe I misspoke then. I want to be real clear that no one can spy or surveil outside the law, and if confirmed as DNI, one of my highest priorities will always be to make sure that the intelligence community is acting in accordance with the law. So I want to make that very clear, Senator.
Again, you're qualifying this based on circumstances, and that's what I think is dangerous. Now, I also want to get into your views on whistleblowers. Now, it is open season on whistleblowers right now in Washington, D.C., and you gave a pleasant-sounding statement about whistleblowers, so I want to be very specific. If the Inspector General determines that a whistleblower complaint should be sent to Congress, are you going to send it over to the Department of Justice or the White House to get their permission?
Any whistleblower complaint, if I'm confirmed as DNI, is going to be handled in accordance with the law. As you know, I don't know how I can be more clear than that.
Oh, I think you could say unequivocally no, because that's what I think is important. And what I want to know is whether there's some kind of veto power over whether Congress hears from whistleblowers. And as with the previous question with respect to spying, you want to have it both ways. You want to try to portray yourself as a defender of the Constitution, and then you water it down with the specifics. Should the identity of whistleblowers ever, under any circumstances, be disclosed without their consent?
No, whistleblowers are entitled to anonymity.
So what is your opinion of those who would call for the outing of IC whistleblowers?
That whistleblowers are entitled to anonymity under the law, and if someone
well, are you distinguishing between lawful whistleblowers or lawful whistleblower complaints? Again, I'm trying to get a sense of what you actually believe.
if someone is a whistleblower under the law, they are entitled to the protections of whistleblower statute under the law. And before you were in the room,
I heard the answer. One last question. I want to get it in. You, in your written answers, seem to think internet voting was okay. You gave a very qualified answer. I happen to think it's the equivalent of putting our ballots on the streets of Moscow. So could you tell me why you think internet voting is okay given all the threats that we have seen to our democracy?
I don't recall the response or how I responded, Senator, but it seems to me that is a policy issue that, if confirmed as DNI, I would not be in the role of making policy. It wouldn't matter. Whatever the law is regarding...
We expect you to be a leader on election security. And if you support the kind of snake oil salesmen we've got in this country that are selling some of these online voting operations, you are going to put at risk our special system of government. I think my time is up, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Welcome, Congressman. In your statement for the record, you wrote that, quote, "The president and I have a good rapport." So if confirmed as DNI, you said you have my commitment to deliver accurate and objective intelligence and speak truth to power. Dan Coates, Sue Gordon, Joe McGuire, other dedicated IC professionals had a good rapport with the president as well until they didn't. Can you give me some specific examples of when you've had to speak truth to power, in particular if it's involved the president of the United States?
Sure. Senator, I appreciate the question. The reason I said a good rapport is I think trust is important. I think it's one of the things that is important and can strengthen the relationship between all parties, intelligence community, Congress, the president. One of the reasons that I indicated before you were in the room that I wanted this job was because it is apolitical, and I have held apolitical positions before. As U.S. Attorney, that is an apolitical role, and in those instances, I frequently had to speak truth to power from the standpoint of there were many occasions where people wanted me to exercise my discretion in a way that considered something other than what the law was, and I never did.
Can you give a particular example?
So-and-so is, I don't want to give examples that would give away a specific case, but if someone was, for instance, a good Republican or a good Democrat and held a position and maybe deserved some special consideration, those kinds of things.
Gotcha.
And in addition...
I think that's adequate. I just want to reclaim my time here for a moment. Last year, the president defended nominating you for the D&I position, stating that you would do an incredible job, and we need somebody like that in there. We need somebody strong that can rein it in, because as I think you've all learned, the intelligence agencies have run amok. What do you think he meant by that?
I don't know. I saw the comment, Senator. I've made clear that, again, first of all, I've made clear, as I just said to you, one of the reasons that I want this position. I've made that without betraying any conversations, but that sentiment I have expressed to the president, and he understands that that I'm looking forward to this position because it's apolitical, and that the intelligence that I will deliver is unvarnished or shaded.
Do you
in any
think
respect.
that the intelligence community or even a single agency has run amok?
I have never said that.
President Trump has repeatedly, and without any basis in my view, accused the hardworking men and women of the IC of working to undermine his administration. Do you believe that there is a quote-unquote deep state in the IC?
I don't know what that means. Senator Collins and I think, talked about that in our call. I don't know what that is.
So would you agree that it would be inappropriate and in some contexts illegal to remove or reassign, to screen or otherwise discriminate against career IC personnel for political reasons, including on the basis of their work assignments in previous administrations?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The president has publicly stated that he expects loyalty from his appointees, and he publicly withdrew your nomination, appointed another individual, but then formally resubmitted your nomination. That sort of turn of events just raises some unique questions. During your conversations with the president regarding this position, what priorities did he communicate to you that he expected you to pursue on his behalf? And did the word loyalty ever come up?
Senator, a couple of points there. I want to be real clear. My loyalty is to the Constitution and the rule of law, and I have made that very clear to everyone, including the president.
So you did discuss loyalty?
No, I've made clear that if I'm in a position, my loyalty is always going to be to the Constitution and rule of law.
So you made that proactively clear. You weren't asked.
Yeah, I made that proactively clear.
And you were not asked.
And I was not. Okay. I absolutely was not asked.
Thank you.
The priorities, one of the priorities, again, I don't want to get into specific conversations, but the sentiment is keeping politics out of the intelligence community. It's one of my priorities. And one thing to I guess, because it's been reported, I withdrew from consideration. I wasn't withdrawn, and so I just wanted the record clear with respect to that.
Senator Collins, do you have one additional question you'd like to ask?
I do. Mr. Chairman?
Senator Wyden, one additional question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congressman, the Congress passed a law requiring an unclassified report on who was responsible for the murder of Jamaal Khashoggi. This is a law today, not a bill, it is a law. The DNI, however, has outright refused to comply with this law, denying the public a single shred of information on this topic. Do you agree that the government is bound by this law and is obligated to provide this report, which stipulates in public, who killed Jamaal Khashoggi and under what circumstances?
Senator, I share your concern. I think I've seen the same information that you have, and I think you're referring to the provisions in the NDAA. And if confirmed as DNI, again, I will ensure that that the law is complied with. I realize that the information, I think in the report, if we're talking about the same thing, is a request for unclassified information. So if confirmed, I want to look myself at the information to make sure that that information has been classified properly.
But that's not the question. This is a law. This is a law, Congressman, and consistently in every one of the areas that I asked you about, with respect to spying, with respect to whistleblowers, now with respect to the law, these are pretty much straightforward yes or no questions, and now you've said you're going to look at what is classified with respect to the late Mr. Khashoggi. We passed a law that resolved it. It is supposed to be made available now. So I'll look forward to your adding to the record on it, but I will tell you, you have certainly been briefed with respect to coming to this hearing, but on issue after issue, I've asked pretty straightforward questions, and what I have gotten is a kind of let us sort of circle the subject and not answer it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Heinrich, do you have an additional question?
Just one. As you know, Congress has not authorized organizational changes at ODNI. We have not appropriated funds for that purpose, but Acting Director Grinnell has been reorganizing ODNI. If confirmed, would you halt that reorganization, and would you seek authorization from Congress to reorganize if you found the need to do so?
Senator, thanks for the question. If I can just first comment on, to Senator Wyden's point, I was hoping to make the point that I'm certainly not trying to be evasive, but the position I'm being considered for is the President's principal intelligence advisor, not his legal advisor, and there is legal counsel that I would go to if I were confirmed as DNI. But Senator, I appreciate the question about organizational changes. As you know, I'm not so presumptuous as to know that I'm going to be confirmed, so I haven't considered or talked about any sort of organizational changes. I want to make clear that it's been that I expect to have unfettered discretion to make all personnel decisions if confirmed as DNI, and I'll make them in the best interest of the IC to make the IC better. And I will certainly, as with everything, work with this committee to keep it fully and currently informed. I want everyone to sort of remember that I'm being considered for this position, but I'm one of you right now as a member of an oversight committee, and America functions better when its elected representatives are fully informed by the intelligence community, and I intend to do that.
With that, I'm going to bring to a close the second block of members' questions, and we'll move to the third block. anybody who's asked questions is excused if they'd like to leave. Let me remind members that when we conclude with this at 12 o'clock, we will reconvene in closed session at 2 o'clock in the Capitol Senate Security Building, and we will again be operating with blocks of time. And there will be a conference room there for anybody that would like to sit, read intelligence products, listen to what's going on in the closed hearing, and then come in for their question period. With that, I recognize Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Chairman. Congressman Ratcliff, it's good to have you here. This job has gone vacant for too long. It's a critically important job. I'm glad you've been nominated. I've read with great interest the letter in the record that was given to us from former Attorney General Ashcroft. He's been a good friend of mine for a long time. I trust his judgment. I know you worked with him as a U.S. attorney and also in a law firm that was formed after you both left the Justice Department, and his view of you, which he shared with me personally as well as in this letter, is significant. We've had a chance to visit about your work on the House Intelligence Committee, and I particularly appreciated your last comment about the importance of being fully open and an oversight committee like this one being fully informed. I would say that when we stood up this structure after 9/11, I certainly anticipated a much smaller coordinating opportunity rather than the bureaucratic size that we see today. I hope when you have a chance to look at this, that you'll look carefully at whether or not the structure as it's grown has really served the principal purpose of coordinating information, or if in some way it may have created yet one more stovepipe of information. I'd like you to comment on your views, maybe as a House Intel member, of just the size of DNI itself, and if that size is one you think is too big, too small, or just right.
Senator, thank you for the remarks and the association with former Attorney General John Ashcroft, who's a great American. But I, like you, come into this position, if confirmed, with some preconceived impressions based on discussions I've had on the Oversight Committee. And as Senator Collins leaves the room, I want to make sure, one of the goals of the DNI, if confirmed, is to make sure that the ODNI and the DNI position are working exactly like Senator Collins and those who stood it up intended it. And so I had a chance to visit with her about it. Like you, I come in with the perspective that you have conversations that maybe indicate that there is too much bureaucracy and there's too much redundancy. Some redundancy is good, but if there's 17 agencies, they don't need to be doing the same thing 17 times or purchasing the same things. And so it'll be one of my immediate priorities to assess how the ODNI is functioning. Again, the goal of the ODNI is to make the IC better so that the IC can make you better and the president better and policymakers better. And so I do think that I want it to be as efficient as possible, but I'll be thoughtful and talk with the heads of the intelligence agencies and elements to find out where they think that some of these things may just be unnecessary redundancies and address those.
You know, I think another question to ask, and you don't have to comment on this, but for you to ask is this agency has grown, have we let the other agencies not have the attention or the staff they needed as the whole universe of intelligence, U.S. intelligence has grown? So much of it has grown at this point that was to be the central clearinghouse, the agency that coordinated information to be sure nobody was left out, and I would look at that. During the 19 years that we have, the last 19 years, we've very much been focused on violent terrorist extremists as the focus of so much of our intelligence efforts. Certainly, that threat has not gone away, but it's also equally as certain that great power competition has emerged in ways that we wouldn't have anticipated even a handful of years ago. Talk a little bit about rebalancing the resources you have to continue to keep an eye on the threats that we have so focused on for almost 2 decades now, but also to rebalance into the great power competition that we see as a significant challenge for us today.
Senator, great question, and I appreciate you asking, because I've had that conversation with a lot of people about what I view as the greatest threat and the greatest threat actor, and I view China as the greatest threat actor right now. I mean, look at where we are with respect to COVID-19 and the role that China plays, the race to 5G, cybersecurity issues, all roads lead to China there. And so one of the priorities, highest priorities that I'll have if confirmed as DNI is to make sure, and again, my background with regard to, violent extremists, that is a generational challenge that we will continue to deal with. We may forget about them, but they don't forget about us. But I agree with you in terms of making sure, as we look at the national intelligence framework and whether we're committing enough resources to the rising power that is China. When you look at the initiatives that they have, the Belt and Road, the Made in China 2025, the all of the military civil fusion initiative, where they literally want by law Chinese companies to collect intelligence. These are all spokes of the same initiative, and that's for China to supplant us as the world's superpower and to be able to set standards around the world. And we very clearly don't want an authoritarian regime like the Chinese Communist Party setting standards in the world marketplace. And so I look forward to sitting down with you, if confirmed, about how ODNI and the other 16 elements are dedicated to the rising threat that is China, which I view as our greatest threat actor.
Well, certainly, Russia is another great threat. Do you want to talk about that for just a second as I conclude my questions?
You bet. Different just because, Russia, we are concerned with Russia in terms of anytime you have a large nuclear stockpile, and they are certainly dedicated to sowing seeds of discord. We are most concerned with them with regard to election interference and making sure we have safe, secure, credible elections, because that's what they have been focused on, and they've been, as I said earlier, they've been successful in sowing seeds of discord, but not, fortunately, in changing votes or the outcome. But between the two, to be real clear, I view China as the rising power, whereas Russia, has an economy about the same size as the economy of my home state of Texas. So we need to be very concerned with them. Vladimir Putin is a very bad actor, and so as DNI, if confirmed, I will make sure that we balance appropriate where our resources are going with regard to both of those threats.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ratcliff. Congressman, I look forward to supporting your nomination both here in the committee and on the floor, and you're working with us as you get this job.
Thank you.
Good morning, Congressman. First, I'd like to start with a series of questions that were from the questionnaire, and I believe they can be answered with yes or no. You did not answer them thusly in the questionnaire, but I think they can be easily answered with yes or no. The first one is question 35. Would you ever ask, encourage, or support an intelligence professional adjusting his or her assessment to avoid criticism from the White House or political appointees?
No.
Would you ever change or remove content in an intelligence assessment for political reasons or at the behest of political leadership?
No.
Question 39. Would you consider an individual